Welcome, everybody. It's good to see y'all. I'm Mitch Rouse. I'm the Associate Director of the Office of Air Quality, and I'm the Senior Associate Director here at the agency. Just want to introduce myself. I've been on the job for about 2 weeks now, so you may not recognize my face just yet. Former Chief of Staff here at DEQ. As Chief of Staff, I was heavily involved in a lot of administrative stuff, but also got involved in some of our bigger programmatic projects that we had. So it's I won't say it's an easy transition, but it's a familiar transition into this role. And so I hope in the coming months to get more familiar with some of our more dense topics as we go forward, including ACE, which is what we're here to talk about today. So to give you all a little bit of background, in June of 2019, EPA finalized the ACE rule, the Affordable Clean Energy Rule, at the same time that it finalized the repeal of the Clean Power Plan. So the ACE rule provides states with new emission guidelines under Section 111D that will inform the state's development of standards of performance to reduce carbon dioxide emissions from existing coal-fired EGUs. It also establishes heat rate improvements, efficiency improvements, and the best system of emissions reductions for carbon dioxide from coal-fired EGUs, in what is referred to as a within-the-fence line approach. This approach is source specific and will require a substantial degree of information gathering about affected use. So we're having this meeting because we wanted to provide stakeholders and the public with an opportunity to learn about what the ACE rule requires of states in setting standards of performance, and to also receive input on our process for implementing the ACE rule. And of course, Tricia in our planning branch will be leading a lot of this discussion. I have a lot of confidence in our planning branch. They're a very talented group. As Chief of Staff, I saw them quite often, so I know I was very comfortable in starting this role with them. So Will Montgomery, David, they both do a lot of work in that group, and they'll be our leads on the ACE project. So, of course, after the stakeholder meeting, we plan on maybe having one more once the draft plan is put together. And as always, we'll be interacting as we go. But that's really all I have in the way of introductions. Just want to say that as the Office of Air Quality, really as a Division of Environmental Quality overall, we continue to be devoted to public service, be devoted to customer service and constituent service. So if you have any needs, please contact me, please contact my staff. We'll be happy to address anything that you have. We'll be happy to discuss any issues with you. We set up meetings regularly. We're always open for shop. So with that, I'll hand it over to Tricia.
So pardon us, this Zoom is fairly new to some of us, so we have some glitches along the way. My apologies for that. So I'm going to give a brief presentation, just basically going over the rule, what it requires from us as states, and kind of what we've been thinking about how our process will unfold over the next couple of years. So the Affordable Clean Energy Rule is promulgated under the authority of Section 111D of the Clean Air Act. It's for existing stationary sources that would otherwise, if it weren't for when they were constructed, so if they were new sources, they would be subject to a new source performance standard. So this kind of goes back and pulls those in and the emissions requirements. So the kind of the role between EPA and the states is EPA sets the guidelines, sets the reductions, and basically tells states, this is what you need to think about as you develop your plan. So this is really, in one guideline, a very state-driven process. So performance for all of the units, the electric units that are subject, and so then they approve some plan, or if they find the plan deficient, or if a state fails to submit a plan. So the Affordable Energy Rule was created in July 8th of 2019. As mentioned before, it addresses carbon dioxide emissions from existing coal-fired power plants, and it is intended to replace the power plant. So in the next few slides, we'll give a very high-level comparison of the two, but this is basically what we're doing now instead. As part of that planning, we also included several provisions for how 111D plans work in general. So comparing the Clean Power Plan to Affordable Clean Energy Plan, energy rule, the Clean Power Plan was much more extensive. So when they were trying to look and set their best emission reductions and provide their guidelines to states, they were looking outside the scope of the power plant in addition to inside the plant. So they were looking at heat rate improvements, but they were also looking at shifting generation to natural gas and to renewables. The Affordable Clean Energy is entirely within the baseline. In terms of how you set the standard, so you could set a rate base, you could set a mass-based cap that was determined to be equivalent. For the Affordable Clean Energy Rule, it has to be a rate. The power plant set statewide goals. The Affordable Clean Energy Rule is unit specific, so not just one power plant, but each specific unit at a power plant. The Clean Power Plan provided for a variety of compliance options, including inter and intrastate trading, energy efficiency, and biomass. Because those are outside of the fence line, the Affordable Clean Energy Rule doesn't allow any of those. So EPA's rationale for replacing the Clean Power Plan with the Affordable Clean Energy Rule is because they believe it exceeded EPA's authority. And the reason they thought this was because it requires generation shifting, and it allows outside the fence line measures for compliance. So they think that 111D rule should be solely achievable at the unit itself. The Clean Power Plan was stayed by the Supreme Court, and many states, including Arkansas, were opposed to the Clean Power Plan. So now I'm going to kind of go into the Affordable Clean Energy Rule itself. So the guidelines that are established there are based on efficiency improvements. So there are 6 candidate technologies that states are required to consider for each subject unit. So those include neural network and intelligent soot blowers, could be independent or could be linked together. Rebuilding or replacing boiler heat pumps. Improvements to control leakage past ducts. Certain changes to the fans, including variable frequency drives, steam turbine pathway upgrades, and redesigning or replacing economizers. They also want states to consider best operating and maintenance practices. So each of these things are efficiency based, trying to improve the heat rate. So how much energy you're getting out of the amount of fuel that you're burning. Many utilities have regular timelines for doing some of these actions, but we need to consider all of those and see if there's any kind of gains that happen at a specific unit. So this is from EPA's rule. These are the projected amounts of efficiency gains that could be achieved from each of these units. These are based on engineering studies. These are general, so each unit may vary from this. And one thing to note is that these are not necessarily active. So if you do all of these things, then you get a 1% reach, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have a 7% improvement, if that makes sense. So as I mentioned before, we have to evaluate these candidate technologies and practices on a unit-specific basis. Then we need to adapt or adopt standards, monitoring, and record-keeping and reporting requirements to basically ensure compliance with the standards that we set. EPA is also requiring us to project future operating characteristics of each unit through 2035. So this is more of something that we have to provide as information to them as part of the state plan. It's not necessarily an enforceable measure that we need to include through rulemaking or other means. We're required to submit our plan for EPA approval and enforceability by July 8, 2022. So EPA has kind of laid out factors in our evaluation of these technologies, and they've tried to give a lot of deference and flexibility. So some of the things that we're allowed to consider are, is a technology feasible at a particular unit? Have recent independent technologies, either those or something else, been installed that either is more efficient or maybe makes it not possible to install any candidate technologies? What sort of interactions between the different candidate technologies might reduce efficiency gains? So as I mentioned before, they're not necessarily additive. Variable emissions performance. So we're thinking about, does this really help efficiency during base load? Does it help efficiency when we're doing load following, idling, startup, shutdown? Kind of, we're allowed to take all of those things into account. We're also allowed to take into account the remaining useful life of the unit. The unit is going to retire soon. It may make the cost of doing upgrades because you're paying over a shorter time not cost effective. We are allowed to consider cost. So as I mentioned before, standard setting, we're going to look at the cumulative effect, which may not be additive, but we've got to factor in everything that we think is applicable to the facility and is within a reasonable cost. It has to be unit specific and rate based, even to the extent that if you have 2 units at one plant and they share something, we have to figure out how to allocate that efficiency gain between the 2 units and determine compliance that way. As I mentioned before, we have to have a way to determine compliance, and generally speaking, unless there's some sort of special circumstance, EPA is recommending that compliance be within 2 years of submission of the state plans. That's not necessarily EPA approval like a lot of other programs are, but when we actually send them the plan itself. If for some reason it's not possible for a unit to comply within 2 years, then we have to establish increments of progress that lead towards compliance. So EPA, as I mentioned before, wants us to project certain unit operating characteristics through 2035 and on a unit-specific basis. And this is annual generation, carbon dioxide emissions, fuel use, fuel prices, fuel carbon content, fixed and variable operations, maintenance costs, heat rates, capacity and capacity factors. So all of this information is not something that DEQ just kind of knows offhand. It's stuff that's going to have to require some sort of research, and we'll kind of get into it. So, as I mentioned before, in addition to promulgating the Affordable Clean Energy Rule, they also set about certain changes to the 111D framework to make the timelines match up much more similarly to state implementation plans, which are the plans that we're kind of more familiar with. So, instead of 1 year to submit a plan under 111D, now we have 3. EPA has 6 months to determine whether or not the plan that we send to them is complete. A year after that, EPA has to act on our plan, either approve or disapprove. And then they have 2 years to promulgate a federal plan if either a state doesn't submit a plan by the deadline or they disapprove the state plan. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about our progress. I know this is kind of a busy slide. But the first kind of steps we're going to go through are kind of our technical analysis. So we're going to identify the subject unit, and then we're going to have to collect technical information about all of those candidate technologies and practices, and we're going to have to evaluate that technology. And that leads us to figuring out, okay, what do these standards of performance need to be? What form do they need to be in? What kind of averaging times and so forth? And then we'll go and take that and propose it both in a plan and in some sort of enforceable way, which we'll get to in a minute. We have a few options on that. Of course, our proposed plan will go through a public hearing and public comment process. If we do a rulemaking, we'll have legislative review of that rulemaking. They have to review and approve it. And then adoption of the measures will have to happen before we submit the plan to EPA. So for state plans, specifically for carbon dioxide from coal-fired power plants, we had some additional requirements that were passed in the 2017 legislative session that basically required some additional review by the legislature. They wanted the DEQ and working with the Economic Development Commission and the Energy Office, which is now part of DEQ, and the Public Service Commission to develop certain reports or report to the Legislative Council before we went through rulemaking. This last legislative session in 2019, they amended that to have an option to waive those additional requirements. The reason that they had put those requirements in place was because of the expansive nature of the clean power plan. So we went to them on November 20th, and they granted us that waiver. So now this is just going to operate like any other plan that we do. And the basis for that waiver is that the Affordable Clean Energy Rule does not require generation shifting. It does not require us to close any power plant, and it doesn't impose a statewide goal. So we've already identified the units. So 7 units at 5 power plants, Point Creek, 2 at Independence, 2 at White Bluff, Turk, and Plum Point. The next step would be to collect all that information that we need. We need to have studies to assess the feasibility, cost, and efficiency impacts of each candidate technology and practice. And at this point, we plan to give 120 days to respond. Our understanding from talking with stakeholders is that it's going to be kind of a fairly big list that they're going to have to do some studies to figure out. It's not information that's just readily available on hand. In terms of the future operating characteristics, we may send out an information request, or maybe we could have some sort of third-party study where we're open to options on this. So standard determination, once we get that information from the subject unit or the owners of the subject units, then we can figure out what do we think cumulative efficiency gains are, what do we think the rate of the form of the standard should be. So EPA gives us some flexibility here. We can choose the stretches say net or gross, my apologies. We can actually choose a net or gross rate. And that's going to have pros and cons depending on what you're looking at and how you can account for certain things. Do we want to have a single rate that's maybe could be met over a large range of conditions, or do we need to have a series of rates based on different operating conditions? Do we need to think about averaging time? Could we have a single rate with a larger averaging time? Would that be appropriate and easy, or not easy, but capable of being attained? Or should we have maybe multiple over different kind of load segments with a shorter averaging time? So those are a bunch of things that we kind of need to consider and we really love some feedback on. So certain parts of the plan will have to be adopted at the state level and then sent to EPA and be both state enforceable and federally enforceable. So that's going to include the emission rates, the compliance time, so when do we have to achieve that emission rate, as well as the compliance measures, monitoring, recording, and reporting. So we basically have 3 options for this. All of them require public notice. So we could do a consent to administrative order. This sometimes makes sense if you've got unit-specific information, as is the case in the school, that you can figure out between you and the subject party. We could do a permit revision, that's kind of the same deal, slightly different process. Or we could do rulemaking through the Arkansas Pollution Control and Ecology Commission. Our current meeting is to go through rulemaking, but that's subject to change. We'd love to hear feedback on that. That's another thing we want to hear back from y'all on. We would like to propose the state plan concurrently with the enforceable measures. That way, if somebody comments and we need to change the enforceable measures, if they comment that way on the plan, we can, take that into account as we finalize the rulemaking or administrative order or whatever we do. The final plan submission will be by the governor. So this is our anticipated timeline. I always give this caveat before I show anybody a timeline. I make lots of them, and most of the time they're wrong. But it's kind of our best guess about how we think things are going to work. So the rule was promulgated in July. We got the waiver in September. So we plan to do the information collection request starting this fall. We're hoping maybe by the end of the month we'll be sending that out the door. Plan development will be in high gear after we get that information back from the utilities, and then we'll go through our public process for the plan and the enforceable mechanism. We think that we can beat the July 2022 deadline based on this timeline, a rulemaking process, by about 6 months or so, but it's always good to have a little bit of lead time because you never know if there's going to be something that causes some sort of delay. So hopefully that way we'll be sure to be on time. Now I'm going to turn it over to Will, who's going to kind of moderate our question and answer feedback session.
Thank you for that presentation, Tricia. My name is Will Montgomery, I'm the Policy and Planning Branch Manager at DEQ's Office of Air Quality, and this is time we have on the agenda for taking questions or any comments on our process. If you have a question or a comment and you're in the room, just raise your hand and we'll bring you a mic so that you can get picked up by the mic systems we have in here. And if you're on the webinar and you'd like to ask a question, just type it in and we'll have a member of our staff read it out loud so that everybody can hear it in the room as well. So with that, does anybody have any questions or comments for us? Well,
one question this year, but I was involved with the Clean Power Plan process, and I understood that to be more involved with stakeholders, but several meetings and more stakeholders involved. It looked like this is not similar to that. I'm wondering why there are no more opportunities for stakeholders back in the Clean Power Plan. It looks like we're just going to be able to comment with the public rather than be involved with the plan itself.
well, we do intend to have one more meeting once we have a proposed plan. So the reason for the difference in the process is here, there aren't a lot of policy decisions we can make on the front end without information from the facilities. So the first step is to gather the information. And I know Tricia went over that. So once we have that, we'll be able to look at the data and then make a determination about what we think the ranges are that make sense and then convert those to rates and so forth. At that point, we do intend to have another meeting like this one. And if folks like yourself and your organization are interested in more, we're open to that. Just please let us know. We just didn't see a lot of incremental decisions along the way. It's a much less complex rule in many respects in terms of how you can implement it. But at the same token, it requires more research on the front end, if that makes sense.
Will we have access to this data before being able to comment on the plan? Because it's not going to be.
Absolutely, yeah. We do intend that the information that we get from the facilities will be made public on the record. Absolutely. Yeah. Any other questions in-house? Sure.
Stuart Spencer, Mr. Williams. I had a question about the NSR component. I know when the rule came out proposed, there was a new source review component, which several in the regulated industry thought was essential to be able to implement the plan without being caught up in that type of review. Have you heard anything from EPA on when they plan on finalizing that? I know they bifurcated the NSR part of it. What the timeline is on that?
Yeah, so I'm familiar with that. They did not finalize that with this rule. I have heard from EPA they do intend to finalize at a later date, and haven't specified when. All they've told us is that they're working on it, and that we should proceed if it's not going to be finalized as we're making the rule. Any other questions in there? Erica, do we have anything online? All right, so with that, I think that concludes our presentation. If there aren't any more questions, then I think we'll wrap up. Thank you all for coming. I know that your involvement is critical to a process like this one where we need a lot of input to make sure we're implementing the rule in an expeditious and appropriate manner. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you.